Concepts of chemistry are explained in the context of a short story. One day, the circus called Nitrogen came to the area. 3 children were abducted by Mr. Nitrogen, the owner of the circus. He formed a family called the Ammonia family. Mr. Nitrogen had many brothers, and all abducted 3 children. He and his brothers moved in with some of the hydrocarbon families in what was once the gas station. One moved in with Mrs. Methane, the nurse, and formed the methylamine family. Another attracted the lady so much that he was invited by the ethane sisters, the barmaids, to move in. So he did, and started the ethylamine family. A third got invited by the propanes, and he stayed, forming the propylamine family. All families were genetically related. They were all amino acids. Amino acids formed neighborhoods called protein, and some became very intelligent and formed vital components to the central computer system called DNA. Mr. Nitrogen was a very flexible man. He was able to make triple bonds with the ladies from hydrocarbon that was so tight that they exploded when broken. They formed the cyanide family and were very toxic. A couple of nitrogens took in a policeman from oxygen and formed the NNO family. Whenever they introduced themselves as the NNOs, many thought they stuttered and burst out laughing. They became to be known as the laughing gas family. Mr. Nitrogen in the middle alternated from having 3 bonds with the nitrogen above and 1 bond with the oxygen below to 2 bonds with the nitrogen above and 2 bonds with the oxygen below. This dance distracted people so much that whenever they saw the NNOs, they burst out laughing even when they were by the dentist. Mr. Nitrogen used to perform in his circus magic tricks. One trick he called photosynthesis. With his group called chlorophyll, that looked like a kite, he caught light photons and converted them to electricity that plants were able to use for energy. With his group called hemoglobin, that looked like a net, he carried oxygen that animals used to burn whatever they ate for energy. One day, Mr. Nitrogen and his brothers were out when they were caught in a cosmic ray shower. They were at first separated, but if that wasn't bad enough, Mr. Nitrogen was hit by lightning just in the right place to make him roll up for a while, feeling like one of the ladies. He wasn't the only one zapped by lightning. That day, many of his brothers were also zapped. Mr. Nitrogen, along with his many other unfortunate brothers, were known for a while as Miss Carbon 14s. Soon after they were zapped, they integrated with other carbons into living material. Like Cinderella, when her time was up and she came back to her senses, the unfortunate nitrogens who got zapped eventually found themselves again. Carbon 14s started to decay back to nitrogen at their known rate of decay called half-life. Scientists were able to calculate the age of materials that were once living if they knew how many nitrogens got zapped into carbon 14s, how many carbon 14s got integrated into living materials, their half-life, and the number of carbon 14s still left in the dead living material being dated. Carbon 14's half-life is 5,730 years, which for this presentation is now. After each 5,730 years, half of the remaining carbon 14s decay back to nitrogen. One day, we had a very exciting situation. A lone kid was hooked on flowers. Many regarded him as an acid freak and a danger to the community. One of the most aggressive families around, the Lai family, with Mrs. Sodium and her partner Oxygen, a single dad with his boy, happened to come by. When the Lai family saw the acid kid hooked on flowers, Mrs. Sodium suddenly got very positively charged and left her family. This left her man stuck all alone with the kid, very negatively charged. She knocked the kid off the flowers, sending him to her husband, and stayed with the flower herself. Her husband, happy to get rid of the bitch, adopted the kid as his own and formed a happy family called Water. The bitch, happy with her flower, was neutralized and was called a salt by everyone. My greatest moment in my life came when Chemistryland was invaded by a terrorist called Uranium-235. He threatened to destroy our entire area unless his demands to be the leader of Chemistryland were met. He had a bunch of suicide bombers ready to blow themselves up for his cause. He showed us that when they are hit by a slow neutron, they blow up, causing a great explosion. He demonstrated how a chain reaction could be set up by recruiting and lining up suicide bombers to detonate an entire room of them. When his demands were refused, the first suicide bomber in line blew himself up, which caused the second suicide bomber to blow up. I was able to dislodge the last terrorist in the line before he could blow up the entire building full of suicide bombers. From that point on, everyone liked me and considered me a superhero with powers like a blazing sun.